Hi guys, it's Mr. Pressman. I'm going to be going over our first unit in the Intro to Forensic Science, talking about some of the basics that we'll be covering for this first unit. If you weren't in class last week, reminder this is asynchronous though, so I'll have everything recorded here, and then afterwards, I'll also talk towards the end of the video. I'll talk about the project we'll be starting for this unit, how to do the research for it, the reason why we're doing it, and then we'll also talk about how to create your final products. So. All right. Driving question I want you guys to think about while you're going through this is, should eyewitness accounts be used as evidence in the court of law? So, really quickly, our brains, we're constantly collecting evidence and we're constantly observing things. So, whether we're an eyewitness or a forensic scientist at a crime scene, it's important to always remember and think about, okay, how do we process that information? How do we collect information? Because our brain is very powerful, but there's also a lot of weaknesses that could be a result of our limited ability to perceive the world around us, overstimulation, things like that. So if there's too many things going on, a lot of times it's hard to pay attention to everything. But when we talk about data that we observe, there are two types. We talk about quantitative data, so any data that has a number associated with it, a quantity. And then we also have qualitative data, is any data that describes the quality of an object. Could be color, could be like, how tall. Now, how tall could be quantitative if you know the exact amount, but you could just say they're tall or they're short, or maybe average. Um, Qualitative data could be also like something smelled, like there was an odor coming from that house or things like that. So, again, just reminder that quantitative has a number. So, like, I saw 3 cars drive by before the crime occurred, or the crime occurred at 12:05 p.m., things like that. Anything like that that has a number associated is going to be quantitative data, whereas qualitative data, again, is anything that we can describe with adjectives, things like that. So, all right. And then also, the way we collect this is we use our 5 senses. Now, there's some additional senses, like, for example, we can sense the passage of time. I know I didn't put that on here, but you can, if you're standing there for long enough, you'll realize, like, oh man, this is taking forever. You can feel that passage of time. So sometimes, as eyewitnesses, you may use that sense as well. But the primary senses, sight, taste, hearing, smell, and touch, that's usually how we take in information around us. Our brain is like a giant computer. It's constantly taking these inputs, processing them, and trying to remember as much as it can of that information. Sometimes it's a lot though, so sometimes our brain either has gaps, or our brain sometimes will subconsciously make up things to fill in the blanks if we can't quite remember all the details. So, really quickly, and we'll talk about this more later when we get into forensic psychology, but different parts of your brain have different purposes. And so you can look at this image right here and see all the different ones. There's a motor area, there's parietal lobe, your occipital lobe, your Wernicke's area. So there have been people that have had damage in this area. They can't really understand or the languages anymore, or their Broca's area, so they can't talk anymore. And then this frontal lobe, this one's really interesting. I'll talk about this real quick and then we'll move on. Is that this one is responsible for your movement, your problem solving, your concentration, your thinking, your behavior, personality, and your mood. It's a really important part of your brain. Um, and the way we learned about it is through a lot of, we used to do human testing way back in the day. Now, obviously, we can put electrodes on our head and read brain activity through electricity. But one thing they used to do back in the day is that if you were admitted to a mental institution, they used to call them insane asylums back in the day. Um, you were under the care of the state, and if you were too problematic, let's say, you weren't listening, you weren't easy to control, what they would do is what's called a lobotomy. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not, but a lobotomy is really, really messed up. They took an ice pick and they would like put it right there, right at your tear duct, and they would hit it, and it would pop a spike into your brain and then scramble your frontal lobe. That would make it difficult for you to function. You wouldn't be able to, essentially become a vegetable, because you would lose your personality. You wouldn't be able to concentrate on things, your problem solving. So you're just kind of laying there for the most part. It was pretty messed up. Luckily, we don't do those things today, or at least, you know, it's banned. It's considered inhumane, so they're not allowed to do it anymore. But also, one more fun fact is that your frontal lobe is not fully developed until a lot of evidence says 25-ish, somewhere in there. So, as a young adult, your frontal lobe may not be fully developed, and so sometimes, myself included, was that age. Sometimes we make stupid choices that we don't always think about, and I definitely did that when I was younger. So, some of that is because of our frontal lobes. All right. We're not going to observe that because you guys can just pause and cheat. So, the way we process information, this is in the reading as well. So, make sure you do the reading assignment. But we collect information from all five senses, and then our brain, because it can only process so much information, it filters it to what we're paying attention to, and then it filters it to our perception. So, our general perception, what we can see, what we can observe, so even though maybe I'm looking at this car crash, maybe I can't see all parts of it, or I can't understand fully what's going on. So my perception filters and reduces what I can remember. My short-term memory is also, so once I get that perception phase, now it's going to go to my short-term memory. Our short-term memories cannot hold a lot of information. A phone number is at the upper limits of our short-term memory, and I don't know. I doubt you guys have this problem nowadays, but because everybody's got cell phones. But back in my day, when I was younger, back in the early 2000s or the 1900s, if someone told you a phone number, you would repeat it over and over and over and over, because if you didn't, you were going to forget it, because your short-term memory, if you can't, it takes a while to commit it to long-term memory, and if you don't repeat it, you're going to forget it. And then your long-term memory, so if it finally makes it there, then your brain has said, this is important information, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to put it away for safekeeping for later. And so if it gets to the long term memory, you'll remember a lot more of it. But overall, that long term memory only works is if your brain can deems it important enough to remember. So, and really quickly, I would, if you have notes, I would write this down or type this up. But each step, we lose details, we lose information. So it's important to keep that in mind. And so eyewitness accounts, they can vary a lot from person to person. Details of what occurred fade over time. If you, for example, have ever been in a wreck before, you'll know that like it's very vivid at the very beginning, but then after a while it starts to feel like a dream. And sometimes our brain, our subconscious is really strong. It will fill in missing details of what it thinks is correct. So this is important as a forensic investigator. When we get eyewitness statements, they may not be like, sometimes they could lie, they could collusion, things like that. Maybe they know the person that committed the crime and they don't want to get them in trouble. But a lot of times as well, we got to keep in mind that even if they're trying to be honest, sometimes their brain is tricking them to remember things that they don't quite remember. Um, Sometimes it's also not even with eyewitness accounts, but the Mandela effect. If you've ever heard that before, where a lot of people remember Curious George with a tail or without a tail. I can never remember which one it is, or Berenstain Bears. If you want to have your mind blown, look up the Mandela effect sometime. It's crazy. But usually in a forensic investigation, we want to make sure we have multiple eyewitness accounts if possible. All right. And then some ways to be a better observer. And then this will wrap up the notes. So make an effort to systematically examine your environment. Always be aware of your surroundings. Make sure you know what's going on at all times. So that way you're aware of what can happen. It keeps you safe for one, but also will help you be a better witness if something were to happen. Observe every detail, no matter how big or how small. So pay attention to small details. Now, again, this is easier said than done. But if something's happening, if there's a crime occurring, like you're seeing someone get robbed, pay attention to all the details as much as you can. Really try to make sure it's getting into your brain to a point where it's becoming your long-term memory. Do not make initial interpretations of data. Just focus on retelling everything. So as like a witness, you just want to explain exactly everything that you remember. Don't be like, oh well, I saw this and they looked like this, so it must have been this height. Like, don't make any interpretations. You're just reciting the data, and it's easy to forget things as we observe, to fade. So it's important to write things down. Maybe record an audio note on your phone, things like that. Nowadays, though, I mean, we also have video cameras, which is really helpful for investigations as well. Because if there's a recording, our phone, the videos don't forget, so that helps out a lot. So, anyway, so this is the basics of forensic investigations, and just kind of like getting into this. Now I'm going to start talking about the different branches of forensic science, because forensic science if you watch the video that I assign, is not just one singular thing. It's not just we're trying to get the bad guy. It's not CSI, things like that. It's a little bit more in depth than that. So I'm going to go over the assignment where we're going to learn one, how to research a career, but then also the different careers, because there's so many different careers in forensic science. So I'm going to go over that and talk about that project, and then we'll finish up with this video for Unit 1. All right. So, anyways, as you get started with the project, the first thing to do is to click on Unit 1 Project Careers in Forensic Science. So this assignment is going to summarize, or we'll go over like the many careers in forensics. You guys are going to pick one to become an expert in. And then what we're going to do first is we're going to research this assignment. And then afterwards, or research that career. And then when you're done, you're going to go through and you're going to create either a poster advertisement, a brochure about that job, a video advertisement, or a radio advertisement. So all those options are available, and I'm going to go over how to create each individual one, so that way you guys can choose what best works for you. But first, the research. So to start the research, you got to pick a career in forensic science. So these are your sources. So please make sure you keep your research to these sources. Do not trust Google AI. It is so wrong so many times that it's please don't use it. It's bad. So what I'd recommend, these websites, I already hyperlink them for you, so you can click on them. You can open up each link. They all have wonderful information, but the most important one is the first one. So when you go down here, go to page two. Page one just has the goals, the product options. So again, we're going to go down to page two. It says the forensic science career I am researching is blank, and I want you guys to fill that in. Now, in order to fill that in, click the link, and here are in-depth pages for all of the major careers that you could find that relate to forensic science. So, like arson investigator has to do with fire and determining who started the fire. Um, we have crime scene investigator, which is just your standard, very generic career pathway for if you want to be an investigator. This is usually like entry level. But it's still very good because they go to crime scenes, they collect evidence, things like that. Usually they're in a lot higher demand than some of the more specialties. But there's DNA analysts, there's forensic accountants, there's criminalists, forensic auditors. So what I want you guys to do is you're going to click on one of these. So I am going to look at the forensic ballistics expert. So I'm going to click on this, and this page now is going to specialize in forensic ballistics career. So if you're interested in guns and bullets and maybe the trajectory of bullets, things like that. How do we figure out? Because I'm sure you've seen on TV before, or a documentary, especially if you studied. And we'll look at it later when we get into this topic. This will be a future topic, the JFK assassination, and where did the gun come from? Where did the shot come from? And how do they follow that trajectory? So it's a really cool, interesting career. But as you go through, it'll tell you different details. So it talks about, gives you a summary of the entire career, and then there's an expert in that career that they interview, which is great. And then it talks about the certifications, different colleges that are going to offer those certifications. And so what you'll do is you'll if you want to do this, if you want to do ballistics first, you're going to enter it right here. So the career that I'm researching is, and just double click on that blank and then type in ballistics. All right. And then you're going to go down now the description of the career. So this needs to be like a summary, just a very short, simple summary of what did you learn? What are you doing in this job? What does a day in the job look like? Just very generic. If you're, and I would also think about it and maybe do this one even last if you want to. Come back to this one, but it's like a two sentence, like this is like your summary that you would like post on a website or something to advertise, hey, this is what this career is about, this is maybe what you're going to do, things like that. So like ballistic expert is the study of guns and bullets and gunshots. In this career you will be studying the trajectory of different of shootings, things like and maybe researching different types of guns, matching bullets to guns. And so that would be the description. Then you go, okay. And for some of these other questions, I decided to take the more generic question and break it down into smaller questions to help you answer to the best of your ability. Now, I will recommend that you need a minimum of 2 sentences for each research question. Now, some of these down here, so like where it says, what does a typical day look like in the career? What I want you guys to do is give me at least a full sentence for each sub bullet point or sub point. That way, you at least have some detailed information. It needs to be complete sentences because, again, you're going to be creating this final product. And the more in depth research you have here, the better your final product will become. And so, what does a typical day look like for someone in this career? Well, what are some tasks that they may perform? What are some locations they may have to visit? Are they going to go to a crime scene? Are they going to have to go to court and testify? What are, so those things are both important because that may be an average day may vary a little bit from day to day, but what does it look like overall? What are they doing? And then what are education requirements? What types of degrees are needed? So do they need a bachelor's degree in chemistry or do they need a more specialized degree? Do they need a master's or doctorate? And then based on the degrees, I need you to identify how many years is it going to take? Because here's the thing: when you research, and not just forensic science, but when you research a career to go into, it's important to know how many years of college am I going to have? How many years am I have to spend in college? Because for a lot of people, that's important. Is it 2 years? Is it four? Usually, on average, for a bachelor's degree, if it's just a bachelor's degrees need 4 years. If you need a master's, on average, that's 6 years. If you need a doctorate, that's going to be 8 total years, 4 for your bachelor's and an additional 4 for your doctoral degree. Now, that can vary, that can change depending on person to person. Some people finish college faster, some people take longer to finish college. It took me about 6 years to get my master's in education, so it just varies from person to person, but those are on average. And then also, what are some colleges that are required? By the way, the colleges that offer these degrees, they got it right here. The certificates in ballistics, they have bachelor's degrees in forensic ballistic. So this website is going to provide a lot of different colleges that will offer it. Also, I would maybe look and see, do any colleges in Kentucky offer it? Because I'm sure you guys are aware of by now. But based on your grades, you guys get Keys money, and that Keys money can help give you scholarships to colleges in Kentucky. So even if you're not pursuing a career in forensics, it's always good to look at, okay, what colleges offer that degree that I need and how long is it going to take me? And if I have the option to go into somewhere in Kentucky, I have that extra scholarship money, that Keys money to help pay for it. And then what is pay like? So you're going to go over, the starting pay, the average pay, and the top salaries. A lot of times, many websites, if the website, the main career website, does not have it, you could always go to some others. Bureau of Labor Statistics usually has those numbers, but if you scroll down, you can look at um, different certifications, different programs. There's careers related features. But I think if I go up higher, yeah, this website might have it. But again, like I said, not only are you looking at this website, but I would also look at some others as well. So if you need to look up salaries, just click some of the links. Again, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Live About Careers. Again, this also has, if I click on this one, this is a great source as well. It's going to have a lot of the information the other won't have. And so I'm going to scroll down to ballistics right here, click on that one. Now, and when you're doing this as well, so if you're trying to find, so I'm going to show you guys this example. Once it loads this page, it'll be a little slow, but there we go. So once it loads this page, I want to know, maybe I'm just looking for money for salary. So I'm going to do Control F, Control plus F on my keyboard, and it's going to pop up this little search window, and I'm going to type in salary. And then boom, right there, it gives it for us. So the annual salary potential for ballistic experts can range from 30,000 to more than $80,000. Just typo there, with an average salary of $55,000 a year. Now, something to keep in mind, and I just want to talk about this, and you guys, if you want to look it up, is cost of living. Sometimes that $30,000. Again, I don't know why they're missing their zero. That $30,000, that might be because that's a low cost of living environment. Kentucky overall is pretty low in terms of cost of living, whereas places like New York City are much higher. So $30,000 here is nowhere near $30,000 in New York City. So if you got paid $30,000 here, you may get paid that $80,000 in New York City because it costs a lot more to live there. And so wages usually match the cost of living. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at your salary. Um, Again, make sure you guys are answering that, looking at job growth, because another good thing to look up when you're researching a career is are there jobs going to be available when I graduate? You don't want to go into a career that is either shrinking or maybe it's just not growing in general, because if it's not growing, then when you graduate, you're competing with people already in that career and it's really hard to get in. Whereas, like, if there's new positions, you're much more likely to get a job. So that's really important. And then the last question, or well, the last two questions I want to talk about really quickly. So, in your opinion, what are the pros and cons? So, what are the positive and negatives? What seems like the good things, the bad things about this job? And then what should people be aware of? So, this is just like your disclaimer, like, don't choose this job if you don't like blood, or don't choose this job if you're afraid of guns, things like that. So whatever you think is relative to your career, put it here that someone might need to keep that in mind. All right. And so we will move on to the last section where we're going to talk about the final product of this project. For the final section of this video, we're going to go over the final product of your careers project. So looking at this, here is a section for you guys to upload your final product. The rubric is right here. If you click on it, basically what I'm looking for your final product is that you're going to be creating an advertisement to advertise to someone else your career in forensic science and convince them that your career is the one that they should go with. And so with any advertisement, you need to give a description of a career. You need to give the responsibilities of the scientist, the job prerequisites. Again, all of this is in the research. You're basically just converting this into a final product. How much are they going to get paid, job availability, anything that you think they should consider. And then the last category is the only thing that's not in the research, and that is the product or the quality of your product. So make sure that if you're, whatever your presentation is, you're doing spell check on it. Make sure to check for spelling and grammatical errors. Make sure that it has a variety of pictures, text, things like that. It needs to be colorful and it needs to be engaging, but it also needs to be in a way that I can understand it. Now, if you decide to do, and I'll talk about the different options in just a moment, but if you decide to do a video or audio advertisement, then I need to be able to hear and understand you. So make sure your mic quality is coming through just fine. So, and also make sure you're not muted, because right before I recorded this last chapter of the video, I realized after 7 minutes that, oh, I did not have my mic unmuted. So make sure your mic's unmuted. That's really important if you're choosing that. But again, you guys should have already finished by now. And if you haven't finished, then pause this video, go back and finish your research. But on your research, when you're done, again, we're going to create some sort of advertisement. It can be a brochure handout, which is like a trifold. It could be a video advertisement or a radio advertisement, which is just audio only. You can make a poster advertisement. So there's 4 different options from you guys to choose from, and you can choose how to create these. If you would like to make a physical copy of your advertisement, your poster, that is fine. I don't recommend it because I don't want you to have to go buy poster paper, but that is an option. And then you can take a photo of it with your camera on your Chromebook and upload it that way. But I highly recommend, my recommendation is that you use Canva. There's also Google Vids, that is a possibility, or Google Slides. But Canva, I feel like, is an easy way to create professional looking products with very little work. It's very scientifically minded. I'm not very creative. And so I use Canva to help me out. So the way that you do with Canva is that what I would recommend is that you type in like job ad poster, or you could do TV commercial, and it'll give you templates. And what you do is you go in, you customize, and so if it has a little video icon, it means that it's a video recording. And so when you click on it, it's going to give you the option to edit this, add, you could add images, you can add text to it, and then you can record your video into this. And so this gives you an opportunity to, if you want to do a recording, you could do a recording. Again, thinking about like an advertisement that you would see on television or on the radio, to advertise your career. And all you're going to do is you're going to convert that research into this. So if you're doing a video or audio advertisement, you could read through your research. Now, again, make sure you're making sure it flows, it transitions from one to another. Um, or if you want to do a poster, you can come over here. Now, I was showing you guys ballistics the other day, so I went ahead and started a ballistics poster advertisement. So again, you're going to try to convince people. So, you can put open recruitment at the top. I just typed in job advertisement poster. I selected this one. You could change. I like frames. So frames, I was talking about. You can change these to where it'll change the shape of your photograph. And so if you feel like there's like a certain style you want, or maybe you want to put like 3 different photos stacked on top of each other, I'm going to add this frame. And then you can go to elements. I click off frames. By the way, frames is down here at the bottom of the elements category. There's frames. There's also audio. There's animation. So you can add animated GIFs. You could add shapes. You could add photos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up ballistics. Now, if you look up something like handgun, bloody knife, it's probably going to deny it because it's for education. So they're going to try to keep it as like educational as possible in the way you type your requests. Obviously, it needs to be school appropriate when you upload this, so don't upload things that are not school appropriate. But so for example, measuring of the bullets, definitely not the giant ballistics missile. I'm going to include this one as well. So I click and drag it over, and then it auto crops it in my box for my frame. Now, if I don't like where it's at, I can double click the picture, and I can move it around in the frame to fit what I want. Um, the text, we can always add text. There's different styles of text. You can change the colors of text. And basically, again, what you're going to do is you're going to edit and create to make it to where this is an advertisement for your final product. You can also upload photos. So if you can't find something, you can either record yourself. So this would be like more for the video, or you can upload files. If you can't find a photo on Canva, I recommend try to find it on Canva. But if you absolutely can't, go to Google. You can download it and you can upload it to Canva that way. There's also like pointer tools you don't really need for this. And there's other apps as well. Magic Media, if you really feel necessary, you can use AI to help create photos. Also for your video, if you want to use AI voice, there is an option for that. So go to your apps, go to AI voice. That's perfect for your video or TV commercial or your radio or TV commercial. So if you guys have questions, I'll be live today during class time, but also I'll always be live 1:30 to 2, Monday through Thursday during my office hours. If you guys need help, I always recommend you guys show up for that. Um, the most important thing, when you are finished, click on share, click on download, or you guys, I don't have an option, but you guys will have an option to click on classroom, and then you can add it directly to the assignment. So again, I don't have that option. Oh, there it is. So I do have that option. I lied. So click on Google Classroom, click on continue, and then you'll have to click on, so this is for when you are finished. You'll share to Classroom. Once it loads, hopefully your computer's not as slow as mine, you'll share to a class. You can pick whichever class, forensic science, and then you're going to share. So for me, it has these, but for you, it will have the assignment. So just share it to the final product, and then you can turn it in from there. If you guys have questions, again, like I said, I'll be live today. Just let me know. Otherwise, you guys have a great day. And keep up the good work. Bye, guys.